Hi, I'm Sarah Shea.
And I'm Strangely Duesberg.
Welcome to the Pilot House,
A podcast where we watch all the shows we missed the first time around.
and try to figure out where the heck they were going with this. So, Strangely, what do you know about the Addams family?
I believe their house is a museum.
Yeah, I've heard that when people come to see them, it really is.
A scree-um?
Now, I don't know what a scree-um is, but I have it on very good authority that their house is that.
Ba-da-da-dum.
I was going to do that, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to start and see if Strangely does the same thing.
Of all the Nick at Night shows, this is definitely the one that has the deepest familiarity for me looking back.
Yeah.
This is the one that I really connected with, I really loved during that Nick at Night block. So much cultural commentary has been made of how the Addams family was kind of this reversal indictment of 50s and 60s sort of nuclear family culture. Mm-hmm. But even my relatively conservative childhood in the 90s, I felt like the Addams family was upending it. Like, there's still just, there's something about Gomez and Morticia being like into each other, being visibly in love.
Yeah.
Certainly
the sitcom where the put upon husband is nagged by his wife or, talks crap about his wife or whatever, did not stop in the 90s.
Right, and I think that's one of the reasons that of all of the sort of 50s, 60s television shows that got made into movies in the 90s and early aughts, this one was one of the best when it translated over, because a lot of the thematic things and things that made this fun are perennial. Mm-hmm. In a way that, something like I Dream of Jeannie, where it's like this guy is like a class climbing conscious, he's like trying to forward his career, and she throws things out of whack like that. Stuff like that changes, and what people value and even what sort of ideas of career propriety are change over time. But home life and family dynamics, I think, are more perennial.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I remember this so much, is because it was speaking to my existence as well in ways that some of the other shows, like I Love Lucy, didn't as much when I was a kid. There's a family. There's Gomez and Morticia. There's Cousin It, who's all hairy. There's a Frankenstein monster called Lurch, right? Isn't that
I
his
don't
name?
believe he's strictly a Frankenstein, but he's in that mold.
Yeah, he's got the bolts on his neck. And
does he?
I think he does, yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I was really excited. You were setting me up for a perfect transition, and then you started describing the family before I could cut in with, it's interesting you say that, Strangely, because I actually have very little memory of this show. All the things I know about the Addams family are more from the films. Mm-hmm. The amazing 1990s live-action films, which are very beloved to me. I genuinely don't remember ever watching this as a kid. And it's hard to know how much of what I know about it now I knew about it then. I think I was aware that it existed. I think I knew when the movie came out that it had been a TV show. I might have even known that John Astin was on it, because he's also on Batman, which I also knew him from that. And I feel like when he showed up as the Riddler, I was like, what's Gomez Addams doing here? Where's Frank Gorshin? This guy is not right for this part. Love John Astin. Still don't think he was right for that part. But all the things I know about the Addams family and the structure and who they are and what they look like, I think is pretty much from the movies. So I might be picturing the Lurch from the movies, and maybe he looked different on the show, and I just don't even know. Yeah.
Well, again, that's the thing is a lot of these translations to the big screen, things were really changed or dynamics were different, and a lot of the Addams family just ported right over. My memory of it is that it's very close. They're very close. There's a lot of updated stuff, but at the same time, even character designs and everything, just they really work. They're very iconic. They're very visual, and they really work. Wednesday and Pugsley. Clearly, of the two kids, one of them left a strong impression on me, and the other did not.
I feel like one of them has become more of a phenomenon. There was there's a new series that they're coming out with
Yeah.
in a year or two. I think it's more about her like going to boarding school or something rather than being about the family. Anyway, I feel like she's become more of a cultural recognizable thing than Pugsley, but
I think it's that reversal of like sort of a traditional well-behaved daughter, she's like doing things that are violent, but it's not just that she's being violent with Pugsley, she's experimenting, she's a scientist, she's adventurous, it's the things that I think for young people watching her. I mean, I remember as a kid, like I thought she was the shit. Like, there's things that you watch as a kid and you're like, oh, I want to hang out with that character, or I want to be that character, Pippi Longstocking or Mrs. Pigglewiggle, like awesome characters. And Wednesday is definitely like looms large. Which now that I think about it is probably the origin of my deep and abiding love for Christina Ricci. Because it was like, she was Wednesday in the films.
Yeah.
And everything.
She's so good. Oh, I love her. I'm looking forward to finding out what is different about the show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like I know nothing about it, but I'm curious to see how much of it will be like, oh, I didn't even know that. Like, I've seen stills. I know vaguely what all the actors look like on the show. I know that apparently the set of their house was like very brightly colored, which is weird because it's in black and white in the show, right? It's like there's extant colored pictures of it that are like, it's like pink and yellow and green and bright colors and everything.
Yeah.
But I do want to address something about the Addams Family, which is that a lot of people think that either the Addams Family copied the Munsters or vice versa. And I think a lot of people think it was the Munsters that copied the Addams Family because the Addams Family came from this cartoon series.
Like New Yorker cartoons.
Yeah. But two important pieces of information. One, I don't remember the exact details, so you'll have to like do your own research on this. This is not a research podcast. We do not cite our sources. But I have heard in recent years that Addams Family and the Munsters came out around the same time. Like they were already both in production when they found out about the other. It's a Ants and a Bug's Life situation. It's a Deep Impact and Armageddon situation where something was in the zeitgeist. Because the Munsters was more envisioned as what if all of the Universal monsters were a family? Wouldn't that be funny? And whereas the Addams Family was only vaguely and loosely based on the cartoons. What's interesting about it is that in the cartoons, they were single-panel New Yorker type cartoons. They were just funny scenarios. They didn't have storylines. And it wasn't about a family exactly. Like, apparently the first comic in which a Morticia-like character appears, her husband is like a Wolfman type guy. Yeah. So a lot of the structure of the Addams Family came from the show, not from the cartoons. And they weren't called the Addams Family. Their characters were not named Morticia and Gomez Addams and stuff like that. They were just a lot of weird characters. The premise of they do normal family stuff, but they're monsters and weirdos. That comes from the cartoons. But like so much of the structure of what is the Addams Family actually comes from this show.
Yeah. Just a quick fun fact. There are often projects that exist in the zeitgeist together.
Yeah.
But the specific example of Ants in a Bug's Life is not one of them.
Oh, really?
Ants was produced by like an angry, jilted former Disney producer who like rushed it out to have a competing bug movie as a fuck you
really?
to Disney. Yeah.
I've always heard that given as an example of like coincidence. Because Deep Impact and Armageddon, that one's proven.
That
I think that it's like they could not have had foreknowledge of each other.
Yeah.
Like because they were like in pre-production at the same time.
Well, it's like there was a National Geographic story on Hadrian's Wall.
Yeah.
And then like a bunch of fantasy things came out with like a wall, and on one side north is magic, and on the south of it is not. So there's like Garth Nix's Old Kingdom trilogy and Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I think there was like 2 years before the Deep Impact and Armageddon came out, or 3 years, there was some prominent National Geographic spread about could a giant asteroid destroy the Earth. And it was like, it was perfectly timed for, that's about the right amount of time for someone to write a screenplay and get it get it seen and everything. It's definitely happened before, more than just those movies, though.
Yeah.
I'm sad to know that Ants in a Bug's Life is not an example. Because certainly people do that. They hear about a big studio doing a thing, and then they go, can we rush out something similar to compete? To piggyback off of their...
Right.
Let's compete, more piggyback off of the popularity.
That's the entire business model of Asylum Studios.
Yeah. Absolute. If you're not familiar with Asylum Studios, it's a very... you can't even call them B movies. It is an insult to B movies everywhere. Asylum movies are like Z movies. They are so half-assed. They are entirely designed so that when you are looking, well, now online or in the past in a video store, and you'd heard about some movie with a specific title or with a specific theme, and then you saw something that looked similar, you went, oh, I bet this is that movie I heard about, and you would rent it. And then when you watched it, there would be a movie there. Whether it had any similarity to the thing you thought it was going to be, it does not matter. Oh my god. The worst movie I have ever seen in my life, and that is including everything I've seen through MSG3K, was an Asylum picture. It was not even fun to watch.
Well, speaking of things that are fun to watch, shall we actually go watch The Addams Family?
Let's do. Do.
The thorns are so much larger this fall.
Lovely, Morticia. You have such a way with roses.
Thank you, Gomez. Did I just hear a peal of thunder?
You did, Tish, you did.
Oh, that's the most heavenly sound. It makes life worth living. You remember our honeymoon, Gomez?
Who could forget our first night in Death Valley?
There was a stillness in the air.
Tish.
The moon was full, and that lovely, soft fluttering of bat wings. And that divine cave.
You're so romantic, Tish.
I think they're waiting for us, Gomez. The music is so lovely.
I was genuinely surprised how much of the classic Addams Family stuff was in that first episode, like right from the beginning.
No, this is a prime example of a show that knew exactly what it wanted to be right away.
Well, I wonder how much of it was like recreating imagery from the comics, and how much of it was just like, this is some stuff that these people are gonna do. Mm-hmm. Like Morticia cutting the heads off of roses. Uncle Fester with the light bulb in his mouth, like right from the get-go. Yes, those are the two main things. But like also just the other elements of like Morticia and Gomez being so affectionate with each other. I really didn't know how that was going to look in the TV show. Like, I've seen it in a movie from the 90s, but like, what is it going to look like in a TV show from... Do we look up what year this came out?
No, I want to say 60s.
But it was black and white.
Early 60s.
Yeah, so early, certainly.
Well, yeah, that's the fascinating thing, is that there's stuff that they can get away with in this show because the ostensible premise is that these people are backwards and just everything is it's opposite day with these people all the time. Yeah. So husband and wife being all over each other and super lovey is like, well, clearly it's not the old ball and chain. It's the inversion, and yet.
But still, like, them being very fond of each other and like looking in each other's eyes, I expected that. But like him kissing her wrist and then like kissing all over her shoulders, I was like, oh, all right, they went for it, you know. I mean, it wasn't nearly as sexual as Raul Julia and Angelica Houston in the film, right? Nothing could be that sexy, but like they went for it, like certainly. Another thing, I've heard so many people talk about their relationship being the kind of backwards from the norm thing, where they're like so visibly not only in love but like physically affectionate with each other. Gomez being like the one who's worried about the children. So the premise of the episode is that the school board's like, your children have to go to school. They're 6 and 8 years old. Why aren't they in school yet? And then they go to school and they're like, we don't like the school, whatever. Like, it's the plot is not really important. But Gomez is the one who's like, we can't send the kids to school. What's the point of having kids if you just to get rid of them? Like, he wants the kids around. And then he's like, I'll miss them. And then eventually, Martin's like, no, I think we should send them to the school. And when they go to the school, he's the one who's like checking the time and saying, it's already 3:00. Are they keep him there all night? Like, he is really worried. He's pacing back and forth. And Mortis is like, Gomez, calm the fuck down. Like, but that was another element I did not know about.
Yeah. And I think, going a little bit back to what you're saying about how surprising it is that they have such a strong vision for this show right off the bat.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that does come from the fact that the comics were a thing for years and years. Like George Addams? What was that? Charles Addams' comics have been around for a while. And even though some of the earlier ones, like you mentioned, like, the Tish type character is originally with a werewolf. I think over time, they sort of started to circle in on a more specific vibe. I
think that I've seen at least one where the Morticia type character introduces her husband, and it's basically Lurch.
Yeah.
They just hadn't figured, so it's like that he came from the comic, but they just, hadn't figured it all out yet.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why it adapted so well into television, is that there wasn't, I think, a really strongly established, specific continuity or canon.
Sure, yeah.
But there was a very strong vibe.
Yeah.
And I think
and lots of gags.
Yeah, and when you translate it into a TV show, having the vibe really established right out the gate, it almost provides guidance for how the characters will develop. Because if you need to set up a certain situation, you need a certain type of person, there's a lot of things that sort of flow out of each other. And this show is just like, it all kind of, like, one thing leads to another in a way that feels so much more organic for a show from this era than you're used to seeing. Usually there's a lot of, like, long setups or expo log or things like that. And in this, like, a lot of stuff just gets revealed through action and conversation as opposed to, specifically, like, backstory. It just all comes out of action. And so it feels very, I used the word organic already, but it feels very organic, which I think is why it's so endearing right off the bat. Yeah. Before we talk more about this episode, we need to address what we were right about and what we were wrong about.
Oh gosh, yeah, I launched right into it.
It's all right. Usually it's me that launches right into it, so I'm glad we're trading off on that role. I was wrong about Lurch.
Yeah, he's not a Frankenstein.
He's not.
Herman Munster is a definite Frankenstein.
Yeah.
He has bolts. His skin is green when the episodes are in color. Like, he is Frankenstein guy. But yeah, Lurch is just sort of a very large, strange man.
Yeah, like possibly some kind of something vaguely supernatural-ish, because, like, his voice is definitely, like, there's something weird going on with the voice. And,
oh yeah, he barely speaks. Yeah. He speaks in very short things, like, follow me. But it's mostly this crazy deep voice, which I believe that is actually Ted Cassidy's voice. I could be wrong. I think that they not only found a guy who had, like, a spooky deep voice, he's also very tall and sort of strange looking.
Yeah.
So they really knocked it out of the park with finding that guy. Like, I don't know that, I mean, maybe they wouldn't have, I kind of was watching it going, like, I could see them doing this, like, we found this tall guy, but he has this very normal sounding voice. So let's have him not talk very much, but when he does, we'll dub in someone else's voice that's, like, super deep and, like, what's that guy that has the super deep voice and can also do the high falsetto?
Oh, Candy Condito.
Yeah, like a Candy Condito kind of, like, reverberating deep bass voice. But this is, like, his voice is amazing. I think it's, like, it's not just, holy crap, that's a deep voice. It's, like, it's got a texture to it. Yeah, they really lucked out finding that guy, honestly. I think there's like a novelty single that was, like, released when the show was popular. It was like, just a cliche 60s pop song. It was probably recorded by the same band that, like, was the Archies or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. And they're like, do the Lurch, and it's like just Ted Cassidy occasionally says, do the Lurch or whatever, right? But, like, meanwhile, it's just like a cute little pop song. I think I'm remembering that correctly. But yeah, he's got a great voice. But getting back into what we were right and wrong about, is there anything else?
Not for me. This was exactly as I was remembering it to be, apart from the design elements of Lurch, which, I mean, if you just see, like, photographs of him, like, he's clearly made up, like, in sort of a corpsey, zombie-ish style. So it's not, like, totally out of left field that I would be thinking that.
No,
and there is even a
sure.
Frankenstein name drop about him. Someone's like, he would have scared Frankenstein.
Yeah,
so, like,
yeah.
I vaguely am remembering that, like, they kind of do gesture in that direction from time to time.
That's the vibe they were going for. Like how Morticia has a sort of a sorceress/vampire vibe, but she is not a vampire the way that Lily from the Munsters is a vampire.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the rest of it was just impressions I had that I didn't say out loud that turned out to be wrong, which is so frequent. Things I don't even think to say in the What We Know segment. Like, I did not know that Fester had such a goofy-ass voice, for one thing. I don't know that I've ever heard that guy's voice. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, to me, Fester is Christopher Lloyd. Mm-hmm. But he's like a really goofy kind of cartoon voice.
Yeah.
School? I never went to school, and look how I turned out.
Uncle Fester, looks, charm, and personality aren't everything.
Maybe they went for that to be, like, kind of a contrast. But, like, what is his appearance? Like, he's just weird. A lot of the characters in the show are just weird. As opposed to the Munsters, where everyone is kind of like, Herman is a Frankenstein, and the little kid is like a wolf boy, and the grandfather is a vampire. It's like, everybody in this show is just, they just went with weird.
Yeah, you know, he's kind of got, like, sort of a medieval torturer vibe, you know, kind of like a monk robe kind of vibe. With,
like, a fur collar.
Yeah.
And then the pale skin, the bald head, all of that. But, like, then he's like, well, I never went to school, and I'm great!
Yeah.
Like, what is that voice coming out of this look? I mean, presumably, again, they were going for weird even more than spooky.
Yeah.
Like, weird was the brief.
Yeah. Which, I mean, this whole show, weird was the brief.
Yeah.
Wednesday was a surprise for me because she's so teeny weeny.
Yeah, she's a lot younger than they depicted her in the films. Like, they went older with both of the kids.
Which is...
She's 6 years old. They say they're 6 and 8, and I'm pretty sure Pugsley's supposed to be older. You know, that's interesting. I think of them as being the same age in the movie, or Wednesday older if there is an age difference, a year or two older.
Yeah.
But in this, it's very clear that Pugsley is older.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that there is sort of there's an element of, again, as the show goes on, that they're kind of doing this, like, there's status reversal. So even though Pugsley is older and, you know, bigger and everything, Wednesday is the higher status of the two siblings.
That's true, yeah.
And there's often a vibe of, like, she tells Pugsley what to do.
Yeah, that is a good point, the reversal. Also, he's doing things for her all the time.
Yeah.
He comes in and says, here, I fixed your doll. Now it doesn't have a head because it's Marie Antoinette or whatever. Right. And they hear some crazy noises later, and Morticia says, oh, Pugsley's building a dollhouse. It's like, it's just a joke that there are such loud noises and she's not worried about it, I guess. Like, it's nothing specific. There's no second joke. It's just he's building her a dollhouse. Instead of them being, like, bickering and teasing each other, or the older brother, like, making fun of or hating his younger sister, or thinking the brother's annoying or whatever. Like, they just seem to get along pretty well.
Yeah, and that, again, you know, it's those reversals.
Yeah.
But yeah, already teeny tiny Wednesday. It's like right from this first episode. There's a vibe.
Yeah.
There's a mood.
Wow, her crying was so weird. Can we address that for a second?
Yeah.
They go to school for the first time. They come home, and she runs into the house, making the strangest noises. It really sounded to me like they dubbed in the crying later.
I think that's what happened.
Yeah, they were like, they could not figure out, like, how to make this girl make crying noises. It's very strange.
There's definitely some very odd child acting choices happening where it's just
always.
like, you can tell a director is off camera being like, okay, now look grumpy. And then it's like, all right, that's the face the kid makes. Like,
yeah. When we first see the shot of the whole family staring at the camera for the intro song, you said that kid playing Pugsy looks like he's there under duress.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like he's like doing a like I'm a weirdo face. He just looks like he's like, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is him trying to put on a weirdo face, but
yeah. I mean, for all we know, the direction he was given for that was you don't want to be in the family photo.
I guess.
Like they're going for kind of like surly preteen boy, like doesn't want to, like.
Sure, yeah.
It is fantastic how well this cast works together, though. I mean, weird child acting aside, like I'm so curious if they had like a lot of time to sort of play these characters, if they got to workshop this together for a while or something.
Yeah.
Because of the adult actors, the most awkward thing to me is that it feels like Gomez isn't quite there. Like sort of the like kind of Latin lover kind of vibe. Like there's flashes of it, but there's also a lot of him in this first episode that feels like kind of like a Groucho Marx. Like he's really going for
smoking
a
a cigar and just being like, wow, what do you think about it? That is a very good point.
Like there's a lot of quips of like, some like wordplay, like deliberate wordplay, misunderstanding type Groucho type stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at the visual of the character, it makes sense that somebody, particularly in the early 60s, is drawing that comparison.
Sure, yeah.
Chomping a cigar, you got your mustache.
Yeah, and he's just like, he's doing all the face acting, and it's wonderful.
And he's clearly having a good time, but sort of my overall impression of Gomez isn't quite there in the way that Morticia arrives fully formed.
Yes.
As like, the just kind of like, like very breathy, kind of like.
Oh, my beautiful hemlock, why are you wilting? Oh, are you not getting enough moonlight? Like she's just this sort of wavy, sort of flowy, like calm, but sort of like, strange. Yeah, her whole thing seems pretty locked in already. Mm-hmm. She gets, I think, it's interesting that they went with Angelica Houston in the movie because she has such a much more dramatic appearance. Whereas Carolyn Jones is cute as a friggin' button. Like, she has this very cute face, surrounded by this straight black hair and this, like, long black gown with, like, frilly bits sort of waving off of it. Not frilly, but, like, diaphanous scarves sort of flowing off of it. It's just interesting. I knew what Carolyn Jones looked like. I'd seen pictures, but just seeing her in the role and thinking about Angelica Houston in the film, I'm like, very interesting. And Angelica Houston's way of playing the character in the film is like she really leans into that sort of like kind of calm sort of collectedness and the sort of like air that she has.
Which, that it's interesting looking at the show because I feel that so much of it translates directly and that the differences have more to do with the ways that the film ensemble plays a little differently. Obviously, Christopher Lloyd is a much more forward character in the film.
Yeah.
Whereas my memories of the show is that Fester is more a character who kind of pops in to say something weird, or, he's the one who will come through everyone's hanging out in the living room and then Fester will come through with a box and be like, I found a disembodied head lying in the road. Who would just leave that lying around? And then he's like, I'm taking it upstairs. And that's his whole, there's a lot of that kind of vibe with him, whereas in the film, you've got Christopher frickin' Lloyd. Like,
obviously. So he's doing more. That's actually another aspect of it I didn't think about in the reversal of the traditional show thing. Mm-hmm. The multi-generational household with grandmama and just an uncle, and they actually don't address, at least in the pilot, how he is related to the family. Mm-hmm. He could just be a family friend they call uncle. He's just there. And that's, honestly, I can't think of another show from that time period that even had a grandparent living with them was not super common. But certainly not an uncle.
And speaking of a grandparent living with them, there's no hint, no whiff of there being any kind of tension with her presence either. Mm-hmm. So again, it's not like, oh, my mother-in-law lives with us, or oh, my husband's never been able to move out of his mummy's home. It's just like the family dynamic is very loving.
Yeah, and they all kind of have their function, right? Like he says, when this guy from the school board comes to try and convince him to put the kids in school, he speaks to Gomez. Gomez says, "Oh, well, you'll have to speak to." He does say my mother, right?
Yeah.
She his mother? No, I can't remember. I think she's actually supposed to be Morticia's mom.
Well,
honestly, I'm totally blanking on who Grandmama's the mother of. But anyway, he says that she is in charge of educating the children. And she educates them in art and history. She's teaching them about the French Revolution. Apparently has taught Wednesday how to breed thoroughbred spiders. Which, like, what a weird gag. He's trying to convince this guy from the school board, like, oh, the kids know lots of stuff. Yeah. Like, here, he just picks up a small box, and says, look. And the guy goes, spiders? You do not see anything in the box. You can't even tell, like, does it have a glass lid? It's a very small box. It's, like, smaller than a cigar box. I'm like, what kind of spiders are even in this box? Why are they just in a box on the table? What's going on? And he says, see, how many kids do you know? But, like, you do not see these spiders. They don't do a close-up shot of, like, a bunch of spiders crawling over for, like, the creepy factor. It's just, he just picks up a box. This box has spiders in it. Do not question it.
And that's actually a great example of the amount of times this show doesn't show something, and it will leave things up to your imagination in terms of, like, I know it's a running gag that their weird noises come from the children, and the parents either already know what the kids are doing and just like, oh, like Pugsley's building a dollhouse.
Yeah.
Or they're like, oh, good to know the children are having fun, or so. It's like, I'm glad they're being active again.
Yeah.
And again, a reversal of like any child and their parent. The kid makes a loud noise, the parents go running up there like, what is going on?
Yeah, they're either like, quit that racket, or they're like, what the heck was that? And they're worried. That is a good point. I didn't even think about that aspect of it.
And it's
like they made a list of what are things that parents do on TV, and then they just systematically went through and tried to reverse all of them. Mom is the one who's worried about the kids. Okay, we'll make it dad. Yeah. The parents want to get the kids out of the house. They want the kids to stay at home,
And again, like, instead of constructing sight gags a lot of the time, they're, they didn't try to make spiders or even have an insert shot of spiders. They're just like, they're spiders. And your imagination can fill in around that detail. And that is something that I remember with this show, is that there's sort of these spaces where your own imagination can fill in what is the creepy thing, what's in the box, that kind of stuff.
They're not the ones who have the dragon under the stairs, right? That's the monsters. Like, the monsters have a pet dragon under the stairs that you never actually see. Occasionally, like, smoke or steam comes out, but you don't actually see it.
I think that's the monsters,
okay, yeah.
So are we ready for segments here, or do you have more thoughts about sort of the overall structure of this?
Before we get into anything else, I want to address something about the theme song. I know that there's no particular reason to compare the Munsters and the Addams Family, right? Like, they were each their own show. They were trying to do something a bit different. Okay. But I know I grew up, at least, feeling like people thought of the Munsters as a ripoff of the Addams Family, and the Addams Family was better than the Munsters. I don't know if that is pervasive, but that's kind of what I always got growing up. But I think we can all agree, unequivocally, the Munsters had a better theme song. The Addams Family theme song is iconic, but it's kind of dumb. It's very silly. This is bad rhymes. I mean, scree-um, come on now, guys.
The words, not great. I think the tune is... I think the strength of the theme song and, like, its sort of lasting power has a lot more to do with that. The tune, particularly the ba-da-da-dum.
Yeah. No, that is iconic as hell.
Yeah.
And, like, all credit due to whoever wrote it for making something that iconic. Mm-hmm. I just feel like the lyrics and the fact that they're like, they felt like they had to tell you these people are weirdos. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Monsters theme song is instrumental. You know the theme song? Ba-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Ba-na-na-na-na-na-na. You don't recognize that at all?
Very vaguely.
Wow, yeah. To me, that is, like, super iconic and, like, it's a kind of a banger. It kind of slaps. It rips.
I'm sure it does. It does not in my memory.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think it's a way better theme song. Clearly it's not as unequivocal as I thought it was.
Well, I think maybe later this season we'll have to do an entire episode talking about theme songs.
Oh, maybe we will. We will.
Spoiler alert, we will.
Well, shall we move along to our first segment?
Let's do.
Where did the money go?
This segment is one where we discuss where we think they spent the bulk of the money on this first episode. Often with a pilot, they'll try to come out the gate with something really big, sort of land with a splash.
Yeah.
It's a little less so with something that was already picked up to series like this, where I think it's pretty clear that a lot of the money is going toward these very, very particular put together interior sets.
Oh yeah. All of these sets. I was actually really surprised that when they show the exterior of the house for the first time, they don't show that far away shot that shows it's got like gables or whatever. It's very like kind of old fashioned looking. When you first see the house, it's got like a kind of spooky fence around it, and the yard is just messy. I thought that was hilarious. That's how they made it spooky. There's just like piles of random yard waste lying around. But then when you walk up to the front porch, I'm like, it's cluttered and busy, but it kind of looks normal. Yeah. But yeah, the living room is quite a set. It's very large. It's full of set pieces. It's full of things that are weird looking, or a giant taxidermied tortoise with two heads.
And a full-size taxidermy grizzly bear.
Excuse me. A Titanic taxidermied tortoise with two heads.
Totally.
Yeah, the painting of a giraffe in a suit.
Oh, man.
I would love to know if that is a specific visual reference to a comic, or they painted it because they really thought it was a funny gag, or they found it and went, this will be weird.
I'm sure that there has to be a lively account somewhere of the prop masters for this show.
Oh, yeah. Well, like, at least one of the things Mr. Hilliard from the school board, like, gawks at is just a statue of, like, a samurai or something.
Yeah.
It's not especially weird. It's just something you wouldn't expect to find in someone's house. But compared to a painting of a giraffe in a suit and a two-headed tortoise, that's, like, the last thing he sees in the room, and he does just as much face acting at it, like, oh, what's this? Like, I don't know, it's a freaking statue. I grant you it's weird, but it's less weird. But yeah, all of that stuff, and the conservatory, that's actually true. They kind of take you all over the house. This Mr. Hilliard coming to visit, they almost use it as a conceit for him to meet everyone in the family and see all over the house. It's like, he comes in, he knocks on the door, and Wednesday answers, and she says, here, I'll take you to my mother. She's in the conservatory. And then he speaks to the mother and says, they have to go to school. It's the law. And she goes, oh, the law is my husband's department. You must go speak to him. Lurch, show him to Mr. Addams. Right? And then he meets Lurch, goes to Mr. Addams, who is playing with model trains, which he blows up. I feel like that was possibly new, but also they had to blow up some model trains.
Yep.
Then he's like, oh, the schooling, that's my mother's department, or mother-in-law. Cannot remember what she said. And then they have to go visit her, and she's
playing darts in the guest room. Yeah. Which looks like a dungeon, like the door looks like a dungeon cell.
Yeah. You know what, actually, that was very interesting. Do you remember whether the grandmother remained looking like that the whole show? She looked kind of unformed, like I hadn't figured out what to do with her quite yet.
Oh, I thought it was a very strong character design.
Really?
Like they're going very much for like classic cauldron stirring witch.
Can you say her wig was very bad?
Well, don't like the wig, don't like the theme song. I see how it is, Sarah. Before we move on to our next segment, just because we're talking a lot about the objects in the house, do you have a favorite object that you saw in this?
Oh, I don't know. You must have one since you brought it up.
Yeah, I absolutely do. There's a famous Roman statue of Romulus and Remus being nursed by the she-wolf.
What?
The twins who founded Rome.
No, sorry. I was
familiar
with the statue. I was just like, I didn't see that, but there's a lot to see.
They had a statue that is like the statue of the she-wolf, like very specifically like that statue, but there's no Romulus and Remus under it. It's just a she-wolf with like all of her nipples visible, like in a little zigzaggy line underneath her, just like there on a plinth in the middle of the living room. And
I did not. I didn't parse what that was.
Yeah,
that's
it's so funny though because there's no context. It's just like, oh, wolf with a bunch of nipples.
Wolf with her titties out.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Free the nipple. This show is ahead of its time.
Yeah. Oh wow, I did not notice that at all. That's amazing. I think, honestly, my favorite, just for out of sheer cussedness, might be the bear rug that growls if you step on it, which despite the fact that it does not like to be stepped on and, everybody kind of steps around it for the most part, it is spread all over the steps from the front hall into the living room. It's like, surely that's a bad spot. It's just an inconvenient spot. Hang him on a wall or put him somewhere where you can watch what's going on if he's sentient.
Yeah.
Don't put him it just seems inconvenient.
I love the repeated Lurch just doesn't care.
Oh, yeah. He kind of walks along the edge, so only half of his steps hit it. But he's like, look, there's just only so much I can do.
Yeah.
I can walk stilted, or I can tiptoe around this thing. I can't do both. Or they might have had him do it on purpose because they wanted the thing to growl again, I guess.
Yeah. Well, let's move on, shall we?
Shall.
Cliffs and Chips!
So this segment is where we usually talk about kind of general predictions for the future of the show when it's a show we have not seen any of. But we also talk about any ideas for season 1 cliffhangers, which I don't think will really be particularly an issue with the show, or relationships that we would like to see flourish or become a thing on the show. Now, obviously, we know a little bit about where this show is going.
Yeah. It's going exactly where it already is.
Yeah.
4 years.
4 years. It is treading the same... I mean, I guess I should say, I don't remember really watching it. I don't remember anything changing. This is about what I expected. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They don't add any new characters.
Well, there is one particular character who did not appear in this episode.
Really?
Of course, Cousin It.
Oh, yes.
Cousin It did not make an appearance. I have no idea how much Cousin It was in the original show. I definitely remember Cousin It from episodes. And obviously Cousin It, much bigger thing in the movie. Mm-hmm. Because Cousin It gets to date Joan Cusack. So... No. Doesn't...
I can't remember the actress's name.
It's not Joan Cusack?
No. Joan Cusack is the lady who marries Fester in the second movie.
Oh, you're right. Who's...
I'm blanking on the actress's name, but she's delightful. She's the wife of Dan Hedaya's character at the beginning of the film, and then she, I think by the end of the movie, she's kind of giving Cousin It her number or whatever.
Dana Ivey.
She's a great actress. Great character actress.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm totally different person.
Yeah.
Joan Cusack is there. I just get confused because I want to date Joan Cusack. I think that's the issue we're having.
Totally
here.
Reasonable. And she is a romantic interest when she's introduced.
Yes. But no Cousin It in this first Addams Family episode.
Sure. No other, do they ever, a neighbor, a normal neighbor? Are there any normies that become a regular character?
Not that I remember, but it would be hard to remember normies with this show. Although, I will say that the school superintendent guy, the guy from the school who's trying to get the kids to go to school, that actor is swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
He is going for it.
He did not hold back. He is all over the place. When he first walks in through the gate and he kind of stumbles over some of the random bits of shrubbery that are lying in the path, he just does his whole body. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Really put your shoulders into it. Just the way he's walking, I'm uncomfortable. Things are already weird. It's his whole body is in it.
Yeah. I mean, with this, in terms of ships, relationships, obviously we want to just watch Gomez and Morticia be all over each other forever. Mm-hmm. Honestly, that's about it. I think...
Yeah, there's not anywhere else to go. They're a family.
Yeah. And in terms of cliffs, I think, cliffhangers, obviously, there's a knock at the door. who could it be? And then there's like I'm your new mailman. And it's like the Ghostbusters. I don't know. There's just no like.
I was like really, really waiting to see where you were going with that. Felt like you were going somewhere.
But that's the thing is I don't. So many other shows, you want it to develop, you want it to grow, whatever. And it's just like I just want these weirdos to keep rubbing up against normal life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In small, it's something I always come back to on Pilot House that I love small stories. I like small, intimate things where the stakes are just very personal. Mm-hmm. And that's what this show is. It's like, will this family be able to attend the bake sale? How will Tish's cupcakes be received? Like that's the whole arc of an episode.
Yeah. Him calling her Tish, that was another thing that I like. He does it a couple times, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was right there in the first episode.
Yep.
So cute.
Let's move on to the next segment.
Yeah.
What will this show be?
So this is the segment where we talk about what we think the day-to-day of the show is going to be. I mean, here I almost think we've already said it multiple times. This show is what it is, and it continues to be more of what it is.
Yeah. There's nothing else to say. So, shall we move on?
To our next segment, which we like to call...
Hey, that guy. This is the segment where we address whether there are any recognizable actors in the show, anybody that we were like, oh my gosh, it's that guy. I mean, I think with this, it was just that we were familiar with most of the actors. I mean, John Astin is an iconic character actor and much better cast in this role than as the Riddler, as I have established, and apparently need to keep saying.
Yeah, other than that, I didn't recognize... Other than him from Batman and all of them as iconic to these roles, I didn't really recognize anyone. The vice principal at the school had a certain like vibe of like, this is the lady you bring in to do this in the 60s, but I don't know her name. And
me either, but I did feel like either this lady is the most iconic example of this type of character, or she's just a perfect example of this kind of actor, or I've seen her in something else, and her voice was familiar. I actually did think about looking her up, but I forgot. All right, I just had to pause so I could look up this actress, because I would be genuinely shocked if I didn't actually know her from anything. Oh, strangely. Her name is Madge Blake.
Okay, that's the name
of the
person playing that role. First
of all, perfect. Second of all, she was absolutely familiar to both of us, because she's Aunt Harriet on Batman. Like, of course she is. I can't believe I didn't recognize her right away. Aunt frickin' Harriet.
Classic. Dick. Call Aunt Harriet.
I mean, she's on a lot of other shows. She was, and films as well. She's on Leave It to Beaver, apparently.
So very much like an actress in this era, kind of filling that niche.
Yeah.
We need a Madge type. We'll get Madge.
Oh, good point.
Well, the way you're just falling in love with Madge, it makes me think we should move on to our penultimate segment.
Which we like to call...
I Choose You. I mean, come on. We had to go to this segment now because clearly you're already choosing Madge, but...
I mean, Miss Comstock, the assistant principal of the school, was pretty delightful. And not only because Madge Blake is delightful, but because, Mr. Hilliard is the guy who comes to the house. It takes very little of the Addams family's weirdness for him to be like, oh my God, I'm losing my grip on reality. Yeah. They go to Miss Comstock, and when they say, like, oh, yes, that Mr. Hilliard was a very strange man, Gomez starts suggesting ways of dealing with him, quote unquote. Like, oh, yeah, I know a guy in Haiti. And she just rolls with what she thinks is a joke, but still, she goes, oh, how about a little dip in some boiling oil? She's having a great time being like, oh, what are some other insane things we could do to this guy?
How about a nice old-fashioned horsewhipping?
Good. Or let a boa constrictor give him a good squeeze.
A little dip in boiling oil?
Miss Comstock, you're my kind of people.
And that is a delightful thing about the Addams family in general, is those moments where they act as a catalyst to let other people's weirdness out.
Yeah.
Like that is a thing that happens from time to time with them, and I really enjoy that aspect. In terms of what we see in this first episode, Lurch was the shining surprise for me. The amount of physical comedy that actor is given, and the just like way he goes about it. It's so deadpan, and yet he's doing things that are ridiculous. You know, playing the harpsichord, and then they're like tapping the side of his
yes!
head.
Oh,
and
that whole sequence.
Changes this music, like they're flipping channels on the radio. It's
Right,
just,
yeah. And his physicality changes depending on what style of
Yeah.
music he's playing, too. He really gets into it. That was pretty great.
Yeah, watching him do all this different physicality, and like when he carries the superintendent into the house and everything, like it was really, really fun. And again, my memory of him is just that he's sort of a lurking presence, you know.
Yeah.
You rang, and then it was, but like he's running all over the place in this. It was
lurching presence, even.
yeah.
Had to do it to you.
But yeah, he's delightful.
Yeah. I think, yeah. As far as my favorite character of the ongoing characters, I think just right now it's Gomez. Mm-hmm. John Austin's having so much fun. But I think he seems to be the one who is just like barreling at it the most. Mm-hmm. Like he is just going at it guns a-blazing. I guess the actor who plays Uncle Fester, Jackie Coogan, is also going at it guns a-blazing. I'm less in love with his choices. Yeah.
And I that is, I think, partially why I just don't remember him as being like as central as Gomez and Morticia and the kids, obviously.
Yeah. He just comes in and goes, why would someone leave a perfectly good foot in the road? Apparently I'm Daffy Duck now.
Oh, well, shall we move on to our final segment where we give our
final verdict?
Did this pilot do the job of a pilot and make you want to watch more?
I hate to say it. No, for me, genuinely. But if I answer the sort of sub-question that we're asking there of, did this show know what it was about and set everything out to hook people? I think it did a good job being the first episode of this show. I just felt like that was fun, but I don't necessarily feel like, oh my god, let's watch the next one.
And that's exactly where I'm at as well.
Really?
I think because of how complete an Addams Family experience this was, I'm not like, I mean, I didn't get Cousin It, but it was Addams Family. Like, if I watched another episode of this, it would be
more Addams Family.
More Addams Family. Definitely
a show designed for the time where at a certain time of the week, at a certain time of evening, you'd sit down and if you like this kind of thing, you'd watch that show. Not designed to hook you for another episode right away. Very different time period.
This is absolutely in that class of shows that we occasionally encounter where I think I would really get a lot out of looking up some sort of internet list of top 10 episodes or like wildest Addams Family episodes, or something. You know, like there might be
best
one where
cameos, not cameo, but best guest star appearances. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's one where like someone really famous shows up as like a long lost cousin and has a madcap episode.
Yeah. Or one where they really pushed the boat out, or you could even argue jump the shark. Where like, remember the one where they went to Hawaii? That was a weird choice. Like I would watch one of those.
And that's the thing is, in terms of ongoing, it's not like I'm desperate to see more of this or even to like encounter all of this. It's just the kind of thing where it just kind of this package gave me what I wanted and was hoping for out of watching this show. I know it sounds like I'm damning with faint praise, but often with these watching first episodes of things, it's either so different than you remembered, or it's promising something that you weren't expecting, or it's teasing something that you would like to get that you don't get from this first episode. And this is almost the opposite of our current era of peak television, where everything's about, we'll keep watching and eventually this will pay off. It's like, it all pays off right here.
Yes.
I don't need anything else.
You're not left wanting more with this. It's just like, here's what we're going to be like. Is this the sort of thing you would want to watch of an evening? Well, then we'll be on, Thursdays at 8 or whatever.
And that's enough.
Yeah. This is an example, I think, of a show where the question we came up with as a judge of whether it has succeeded as a pilot, of does it make you want to watch more, kind of belies the era that we grew up in. And it was not quite this. Like, certainly in the era we grew up watching, we grew up watching shows like this, but also the modern shows we grew up with certainly were also not, bingeable, right? But I think that's where our minds are now, at any rate.
Well, I can see what you're saying there, but I think for me, because of how completely this package indicates to me what the rest of it is,
yeah,
I realize that I don't need more of it. Whereas watching something else, like when we watched Batman, I do want more of that.
Yes.
I want more of that.
That's true.
Package. Even though that didn't tease a new villain coming next week.
No, that's a good point.
I
I felt the same way. I was like, please, can we watch? I just want to watch the entire series now.
Yeah.
I just want this to keep happening to me. Where I think that's partially because I have more nostalgia for that show. But I think that if this show had been new to me, and I'd never seen anything like this, I would have more of a feeling of, oh my gosh, I want to watch more because I got to see what they're going to get up to next. Like, what else are they going to do? They've already done so many things I've never seen on TV, right? Like, that would make you have that kind of like, I got to see what else they're going to do next. But I kind of know what they're going to do next. They're going to keep doing the thing they're doing, and they're going to do it great. But
and that's the thing, is we've already been exposed to not only bits and pieces of this over the years, but also the films from the 90s and the almost 60 years worth of things influenced by this.
yes.
This feels a lot like watching sort of a very early version of other things that came later. Everything from the Dark Shadows franchise to even bits and pieces of things like Over the Garden Wall, where you have that kind of combination of like things that should be creepy and off-putting, but they're kind of sweet and gentle at the same time. Like,
yeah. No, I think this is a problem you run into anytime you go back to like the very first of something that became very influential. It's interesting to watch it from the perspective of knowing what it is, or to read it, whatever it ends up being. But it can be hard to become truly engaged with it.
And I think that's almost the interesting thing about how the biggest surprise that we experienced with watching this was how exactly itself it already was right at the beginning.
Yeah. They weren't still kind of figuring out. I mean, maybe if you watch the whole thing, you'd see there were aspects that they were still kind of figuring out. But just from the perspective of someone who doesn't know it that well, feels like they really knew what they were about right from the beginning. All the elements are there. I think that about wraps it up. It knew what it was about, and it is a perfect encapsulation of an Addams Family episode, just all right there from the beginning, and, well done.
Well done. And on that note,
bye! I don't know. That wasn't my best effort.
Nailed it.
Thanks for listening to Pilot House. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Pilot House Pod. Visit our website, pilothousepodcast.com, or email us at pilothousepodcast@gmail.com to suggest future topics.
Please share this episode with a friend or rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps people find us.
Our podcast is entirely listener supported.
So thanks to our special guest stars, Cynthia, Tina, Juniper, and Jerry.
Visit patreon.com/pilothouse to find out how you can become a series regular.
Pilot House is a Herringbone Society production.